Hello! Yes, I am batch filming. Yes, you have seen me in this outfit for 3 videos. And yes, there will be more with me in this outfit. Because I'm finally have the energy to just sit back and record and talk too much and want to delete things. But decide not to delete anything. So I'm not going to edit. Other than to put photos in here if there's photos necessary. Which I don't think I need any photos for this one. This is pretty much open-ended stuff. So you might get a little more from me than you want to get from me. Some TMI here and there, some stories, I don't know. I don't know what to expect when I turn on the camera. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to therapy. I don't know. But I'm going to be doing the philosophy of reading book tag, and I was tagged by Read Find Books, so thank you very much. I am also going to be tagging some other people today, and that is going to be Gaia Athena, who I've known for several years. She is such a nice person. You should definitely go check out her videos. If you become friends, she is going to be one of the most supportive ones that you can find. She'll watch your content. She'll comment like these page-long comments, which just really make your day. So she is someone to have in your corner for sure. Another amazing person is going to be Tangible Reads, Courtney. Definitely go check out her channel as well. She also does some short form content. So like she could do a tag in 2 minutes. I'm like, how did you do a tag in 2 minutes? I'm here with the same tag and mine will be like 45 minutes or an hour. I don't know how she does it. But yeah, that one would be one. And then you've got a couple of other booktubers I put on here. So I've got BookTube with Amy, Courtney Reads, Becca Books and Bujo, and Vidania Silverscribe. She's also tagged me in another video, which I think I did earlier today when I was recording it, I believe. So you will see that as well. So yeah, just some awesome channels to go check out. I really hope you do. I will link them down below. And if you are one of those people, you're tagged. I hope you like tag videos. All right. I'll put the creator of the tag down below as well. I didn't mark it on here, but it'll be in the description. So, I'm going to try to be quick because this is a long tag. This is 20 questions. I have answered the questions on here, so hopefully I'll stay on task, and we'll do this thing together. All right, so the philosophy of reading book tag. Number 1, what's most important? A good character, plot, or message? I'm going to go with character because if I hate the character and I cannot sympathize with them at all, then I don't care if they die, therefore the plot doesn't matter. Because plot is really just those life or death situations or the things that just have you wondering or rooting for the character. And I don't care what happens to the character, whether they die or have forever happiness if I don't like the character. So, character. Number 2, should one read books about ideas or opinions they disagree with? Yes, but not at the expense of your own mental health. So, you know, it's good to say you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. Read books about the opposite side to get information. But if the ideals that align with those sides are the things that make you not like those people, or those, you know, you just don't like those ideals and it's going to really affect your mental health, then don't do it. Stay in your bubble if it's going to make you a more sane person. But it's good to go outside of your bubble if you have the capacity to do so without putting yourself into a negative headspace. Number 3, as tech advances, what do you think will be the role of books? So I think it's going to be a more reliable source of historical context, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I feel like things can be easily manipulated on the internet. You could write an article today and say that it was written 20 years ago and have it where no one can tell that it wasn't written 20 years ago. So those things are seen as fact. Whereas in a book, you're not manipulating a book. If it's printed and someone has it in their attic for 50 years, guess what? Every single word in there is going to be the same 50 years from now when someone picks it up. So I think it's going to be a better way to retain things that have happened in history. And also, I think it's just good entertainment just as it is today. I think that things will be added on. For instance, if you're doing an ebook, there may be an AI that's able to insert pictures or some sort of imagery as you read to go along with the story. I think that that's something that may already be in the works. Same thing with audiobooks, having a visual component where an AI is able to kind of construct things based off of the words in the book to give you images to go along with it. I think that these are things that are already in the works, even if we haven't been told about them. Yeah, that's what I foresee happening as far as technological advances having to do with books. And how important are summaries and reviews and art in your book choosing? So for impulse buys, I look at the art first. Just being honest, that's what's going to draw my eyes in order to pick it up and look at the blurb. And then I will either look at the blurb, or sometimes I just read the first sentence of the book and the last sentence of the book. That might sound weird, but I can get a sense of the author's writing style in just a couple of words. That's a very high standard to put on authors, but I have thousands, if I've got 1,000 books, I don't have time to sit there and keep bringing in new ones. So I can pick up on things just with a sentence or two. And that just comes with reading a lot of books. It also comes with writing books. So yeah, that's what that is. If I've seen a review prior to seeing the book, that will be most important because you're drawn to things that you're familiar with. It's a marketing principle. You put an image in front of someone 70 times and they feel a sense of familiarity with it and comfort with it, and then they wind up choosing it. So for instance, if you're driving by every day and you're seeing an ad for State Farm, and then when you're at home, you're seeing commercials for State Farm, and then you also have like the branded red t-shirts, so every time you see a red polo, you think of State Farm. You don't even need insurance right now, but then when you become driving age and all of a sudden you need insurance, guess what the first brand is that you think of? State Farm. That's just an example of marketing. It's a long game. So same thing with books on BookTube. If you see them on multiple channels, you start to think that you want that book, even if in the beginning you weren't interested. It's a psychological thing. So that's why I tend to not really watch the stuff when it's talking about books that have already been talked about, because I don't want to have that happen to my brain if I know I'm not interested. So once I know I'm not interested, I just skip to later in the video when they're not talking about that book. All right. And for classics, I'll definitely look to Rex, stuff that people have recommended, or I'll look at the summaries, and the covers don't really matter as much. Covers matter a little when there's lots of options, but what I've seen is that with classics, there's sometimes not a lot of options, and the options that you do have are very ugly. They're not covers made with marketing in mind. Those books have been around for hundreds of years. They know that they can rely on word of mouth in order to get sales, so they don't need to pull out any bells and whistles. So that's why summaries and recommendations is the most important for that. And then as far as reviews go, I only really look at reviews if I'm really, really on the fence about reading a book. So if a book mentions maybe a trigger without being specific, I might want to know specifically what it is. Like for instance, if it says violence, I don't know if you mean sexual violence. I don't know if you mean physical violence. I don't know if you mean gun violence. Like, I don't know what you're saying to me. That's not enough of a trigger warning for me to know if I'm interested in that at that time. And then even who is perpetrating the violence. Because if it's an outside character, I'm not going to be triggered by that at all. But if it's like a main character, yeah, I might need to take that under consideration. Also, I will look at reviews, particularly spoiler reviews that are very long and thorough. Those are the ones I'll look at when I'm ready to DNF a book. And so I need a spoiler review to make that decision. So basically, a spoiler review will tell me if I should keep going because things are going to turn around and it's going to get better, or if I've made the right decision to stop reading because the things I'm not liking are the same things that people are complaining about in their book reviews. So that's why. And also, if I've heard that a book is problematic or triggering and I need more context, then I'll look at reviews. Sometimes you can tell with reviews if the masses that are against a book have actually read the book, or if they are taking snippets from one person's review with no context and using that as their basis to avoid. And also you can get more nuance because you can find other people from the similar groups to see what they're saying as well, in order to make a more informed decision about if you just want to take the reviews at face value, or if you want to put yourself in the position to read something that might be unfavorable. You know, at the end of the day, it's up to you. So reviews are a good way to look into it, because sometimes the smallest voices are also the loudest ones, meaning smallest in number. So sometimes less people are more vocal, so it can taint the view that you have on something, whereas the majority of people do not agree, but they're silent. So I think reviews are ways where maybe people feel more secure about voicing their opinions, rather than like getting on a platform like YouTube, putting their face to their words, and inviting criticism that way. So I feel like looking at reviews is a good way to kind of really see what's happening in the readosphere, rather than YouTube videos sometimes. Because we're loud, we're vocal, because we get in front of the camera, and I feel like that takes some level of being vocal. Anyway, number 5, should one ever skim or scan a book? Yes, if you are getting bored with a section but too curious about what's going to happen to DNF, or be satisfied by a spoiler review. Kind of says it all. Number 6, should reading always be enjoyable? Yes and no. All right. So you should keep reading if it's a slog. You should not keep reading if it's a slog to get through and feels like a waste of your time. But I think it's important to read outside of your comfort zone when you have the capacity to do so, so that you can expand your worldview or become a more understanding and compassionate human. So for instance, I don't want to read a book all the time that has to do with suicide, or that has to do with racial injustice, or anything like that that can be triggering. But I think that every once in a while it's important to read a book like that, so you can understand the situation better from the lens of someone who's maybe experienced those things, or had close associations with people who have. Number 7, is it important to be well read? So for this one, I think it kind of depends on what your definition is of well read. I say only if you want to be able to have books to recommend to every type of person. And if the genre you read lacks diversity, you may want to read more widely to stretch yourself. There are certain genres where I just don't see a lot of difference from book to book. Whether that be things to do with there's no presence of mental health in any of the books. There's no disabilities, there's no different races between people, there's no differences of religion, there's nothing. So it's kind of just like a blank slate. You can imagine whoever you want to, you can put them into any scenario, and it's just kind of a story. I think that if that's the case, you're never really learning anything from the book, maybe, about people that are experiencing things different than what you've experienced. And so if that's the case, I would say definitely it's important to be more well-read and maybe stretch yourself by picking up books in genres that do have bigger prevalences of having characters that are not straight up cookie cut. So yeah, I think that can be good. But I don't think it's important to be well-read as far as reading multiple genres. If you really like romance, and it's giving you everything that you want and need from the romance, and it does have like diversity and stuff like that in it, where you're still getting to experience things through other people's lenses, then stick with your romance. There's no need for you to feel any guilt or shame about not wanting to read classics, or not wanting to read sci-fi or fantasy, or anything like that. There's some people that just only want to read nonfiction. That's weird to me, but I mean, you do you. I say that's weird to me because I like fiction. That's all. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is going to limit what you can recommend to people, because a lot of people do not like nonfiction. So it just depends on what your point is with reading, and if you want reading to help you grow as a person or not. Number 8, what is your buying process? So I say watch my book acquiring tag, because again, I go into depth about things. And so that one's going to break down every little bitty thing about buying and acquiring books. So definitely check that out. And number 9, what is your reading process? This changes. I don't really have one, to be honest. Sometimes I will read in a burst. So I will have a book in my hand. I'll have 2 or 3 books in my hand in a day. Sometimes I'm in a slump. Right now, I've been in probably a 3-month slump, so I could see it. I read 10 books one month, 10 books the next month, 13 books the next month, and now I am at 1 book. And we're like halfway through the month. But I was slumping when I got to the 10 books, because guess what? Almost all of those books have been audiobooks or graphic novels. It has not been me sitting down and physically reading. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, those books, I still count as books. But when I'm not reading hardly any physical books, that tells me I'm in a slump. I don't have, like, the mental energy to sit down and read, or life is getting in the way because there's just too much going on. That's kind of what happens. All right. Where am I? How do you use what you read? For entertainment, personal growth, a writing masterclass, and video content inspiration. So writing masterclass basically means if I read a book and I'm like, wow, this one has really good character development. What kind of path did the author use for this character to take? And I can apply that to something that's in a completely different genre. So I'm not just stealing things, but I am recycling things that I like and doing them in new and inventive ways. Number 11. If you download a book to your brain, would you still read? Yes, because the experience isn't just the content of the book, but also the pauses between reading to ponder what's really being said and how you can apply it, as well as what you are doing while you are reading, cementing as memory or even vibe you can revisit later. So there's certain books where I was at a really good place when I was reading them. So if I pick them up to reread them, I'm going to feel those positive emotions because I have connected to that book before. It's like the book carries the memories of the time when you were reading it. And that also happens with audiobooks as well. So like with A Court of Silver Flames or whatever it's called, not that one. Well, yes, that one. That one I was listening to when I was moving out of my apartment into my first home, which is where I'm at now. So I'm always going to connect that book to that time period, and I can remember that time period. I remember mowing the lawn here for the first time when I was reading of House of Sky and Breath or whatever. So I'll remember that. There are times, I think in 6th grade, where I was reading Lewis Duncan's Gallow Hills or whatever in the kitchen of my granddad's house when we lived there after he had died. And we were there with my Aunt Kim and my grandparents. So there was 8 people in a 2-bedroom house. 8 people. Yeah, so I'll remember that if I think of that book. So there's just lots of little bitty connections. I can remember specific days, specific feelings when I'm reading a book that I did during that time. So it kind of transports me to the past. It's my time traveling, which is good because the way that my brain works, sometimes when you do have certain disabilities like ADD or just different sort of like mental stuff, you can actually suffer from memory loss. So I don't lose memory in terms of just like having a blackout type situation. I don't have that, but I do lose memories over time. So like it's very hard for me to retain things. So like some people, they can remember what they ate 2 weeks ago. Like me, it's like, I don't know what I ate this morning sometimes. And there's important things. Like if I talk to my husband about stuff in high school, he will remember certain things. Like he'll remember certain dates we did, all those sorts. He'll remember specific things. Me, no. I'll remember bits and pieces, and I can't even tell you exactly when they happen. Or if you ask me to do a job resume, I don't know what year I was working places because that information isn't important to me, so it just leaves my brain eventually. Sometimes I have to connect multiple things together in order to retain the memory. So like that's why they say scents are the most powerful way to remember something. So like I remember when I smell fresh mowed grass, I remember living in White House, which is where I grew up as a child. Someone's calling me. I don't know who it is, so I'm going to deny that. But anyway, so like certain scents will remind me of things. Like I have to connect things in order to retain. So if there's no like if there's not multiple connections in my brain to retain that memory, I'm probably not going to remember it. It's kind of like, think of a memory as being a ball and the connections being strings. And the more strings you have, it forms a net to carry that memory, which is like the ball. I just came up with that. But anyway, so the more nets I create, the more memories I'll have. But a lot of times I just don't have the nets. So it's like a string, and it's like 1 in 100 chance that I'm going to remember that thing, because there's only one string there, and eventually that ball is going to roll off of the string, and I'm not going to have that memory anymore. So, yeah. What are your views on rereading a book? It's great to do when you're feeling overwhelmed and want to revisit a time in your life when you weren't. If you wait long enough to forget the content, you can relive the first experience. So this happens for me. A lot of times people will say like, oh, I'd give my soul to reread this book for the first time. And I'm like, what? Because I forget a book. I might remember like 1 or 2 things, but for the majority, I can forget entire sections of books. I can forget entire books. Like when I was talking about Peace Like a River, I remember I liked it. I remember there was some sort of religious element where the dad's always praying, and I remember that a guy was like going across something. But I don't remember the book. I don't remember anything. Sometimes when I'm reading, I'll get 100 or 200 pages into a book thinking that I hadn't read it. And then I'll predict something and I'll be like, I think this is going to happen. Still won't know that I've read it. And then it'll happen and it'll be so visceral that I'm like, oh, wait a second. I bet I read this. I think this is going to happen next. And then it will, and then I'll remember that I read it. So it takes like a lot of triggers. But like with this one, I told you what I remembered. But let's see what actually the book is about, because I don't know, and it's going to be a lot different than what I described, I guarantee you. Leif Inger's debut is an extraordinary novel, an epic of generosity and heart that reminds us of the restorative power of great literature. The story of a father raising his 3 children. See, I didn't even remember that there was 3. I just remembered the one. In the 1960s Minnesota, Peace Like a River is at once a heroic quest, a tragedy, a love story, and a haunting meditation on the possibility of magic in the everyday world. Raised on tales of cowboys and pirates, 11-year-old Reuben Land has little doubt that miracles happen all around us, and that it's up to us to make of it what we will. Reuben was born with no air in his lungs, and it was only when his father Jeremiah picked him up and commanded him to breathe that his lungs filled. Reuben struggles with debilitating asthma from then on, making him a boy who knows firsthand that life is a gift, and also one who suspects that his father is touched by God and can overturn the laws of nature. The quiet Midwestern life of the Lands is upended when Davy, the oldest son, kills 2 marauders. See, I didn't even remember that. Someone kills someone. Kills 2 marauders who have come to harm the family. Unlike his father, he is not content to leave all matters of justice in God's hands. The morning of his sentence, Davy, a hero to some, a cold-blooded murderer to others, escapes from his cell, and the Land set out in search of him. Their journey is touched by serendipity and the kindness of strangers, among them a free spirit named Roxana, who offers them a place to stay during a blizzard and winds up providing them with something far more permanent. Meanwhile, a federal agent is trailing the Lands, convinced they know of Davy's whereabouts. With Jeremiah at the helm, the family covers territory far more extraordinary than even the Badlands, where they search for Davy from their Airstream trailer, sprinkled with playful nods of biblical tales, beloved classics such as Huckleberry Finn, the adventure stories of Robert Louis Stevenson, and the westerns of Jane Grey. Peace Like a River unfolds like a revelation. I didn't remember any of that, and there was 2 really big events. that were mentioned in the blurb, and I don't recall them. I don't recall. That's what I'm saying. And this was I think I read this in 2007 or 2008, maybe. So yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago, but like not that long. But other books, I remember more details. Even though I read them even further back. So like Killing Mr. Griffin by Louise Duncan. I read that probably in 6th grade, but I have more connections, so I remembered certain things. So yeah, I still remember that book, even though I don't think I've reread it since. It just comes and goes. It's really weird. Anyway, I also put on here about rereading that if you've aged, you'll get to see it through a new lens and have different takeaways or pick up on subtle details that you missed the first time, like foreshadowing. Number 13, what makes a book bad? Underdeveloped writing skills, poor developmental or structural issues, harmful or gross ideas that are left unchallenged. Something can have really bad ideals but be challenged by other characters in the book, and that's fine. Poor reading experience, whether from technical or subjective issues. Sometimes a book does everything right, but it doesn't do it right for me, and that's okay. I just have to accept that it's not for me. Number 14, what makes a book good? Positive reading experience. And this doesn't matter if the book was crappy on a technical standpoint. I've read some books that were really, really bad on a technical standpoint, but they were fun to read, so I had a good experience. Emotional resonance. That's number 1 for me. I need to have some sort of emotional response to what I'm reading for me to consider it to be a good book. That's why a lot of times books are 3 stars, because they're good, but I don't have any emotional response, and I don't experience a lot of emotions on my own. I don't have any, like, I don't have like a personality disorder or whatever that prevents me from feeling those feelings. I just don't feel them very often. I think it's part of just like a coping mechanism from childhood that's just lasted the whole time, and I'm comfortable with it. But I like to experience emotional resonance, and I get that not through necessarily real world interactions. Those don't really have that for me anymore. But I can get it with movies and books. So I don't know really why that is. I think it's just because I had to disconnect from everybody when I went into the military, but movies and stuff like that were still there during that time, so I was able to process emotions through other media. But yeah, I'm kind of flat. I'm kind of flat normal. I don't know. Anyway, the ability to positively mold your viewpoint, technical writing skill, and marketability, meaning like it's got all the tropes we know and love. That's a good book. You want to be able to predict things, because that means it's well written. I know that seems like the opposite to some people, but no, that's good. That means the author's communicating exactly what they're trying to communicate, and that's why you're able to make those connections. And then, of course, fandom experience. Sometimes an author's crappy, but the fandom's awesome. So it just that can make it seem like a good book, even if it's not a good book. Even when sometimes it's a good author, but the book's not that great, but the fandom is good. So then you're like, okay, it's a mediocre book, but I'm good. I don't know. How do you feel about not finishing a book? Relief if I wasn't liking it. Sometimes I get somewhat guilty if I stop for no reason. And I'm just like, I don't want to read this right now. And I put it off, and it kind of like calls to me, but I'm like, I don't want to read you right now. I don't know. Number 16, should an author's personal life matter at all? Only if it negatively impacts the reading experience. I think that's something that's maybe hard for some people to accept. that people will still read a book even if it's maybe hurtful to another person. But I think that on an individual level, for me personally, maybe it's not the right stance, but it's kind of the stance that I have right now, is that knowledge going to affect my personal reading experience? Not anybody else's, but just mine. And if it's not, then, you know, it doesn't have to matter to me. But also, I think that there's certain things for me where if I know something about the author, if I haven't already read something by them that had a positive experience to kind of balance out the negative of knowing that they're crappy, then I'm probably not going to go near their books with a 10-foot pole, because, like, why would I gravitate towards something that already has negativity, like negative energy surrounding it? Whereas if something has positive energy surrounding it, but then there's also people that are like, oh, well, this and this about the author, but those things that they're expressing about the author are not evident in the books that I'm reading, then I can separate, if that makes sense. So, like, okay, we mentioned in a different tag, I mentioned Jay Kristoff, all right? So I've met Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman in real life. They were really funny. They were nice. I really enjoyed the Illuminae series. So there's positivity surrounding, like, them and their books. But there's also a lot of negative things that have been expressed about Jay Kristoff with cultural appropriation and being dismissive and stuff like that. But in particular with certain ones of his books, like the Nevernight trilogy. So I don't have the Nevernight trilogy, and I know that there's certain things that he took and put into those books that was, like, not okay or that offended people. And so I'm not going to go pick up the Nevernight series, even though I like some Jay Kristoff books, because those books in particular have negativity surrounding them, like personal negative vibes that I would see that would be like, okay, if I see this book cover, it gives me a negative vibe because of the associations I have with the way that those books made people feel. And so I'm not going to go read those books. But then with the Illuminae series, I haven't heard any negativity about those, and I've read them without having the biases of anyone else. And so I don't have any negative associations with them whatsoever. So it wouldn't affect my reading experience at all, reading those books, or even the Aurora Rising series. I haven't heard anything about those either. Please don't tell me, because I really want to read them. I'm just being honest. But, like, sometimes for some people, the second you hear anything negative about a book, you are like an empath. And so you take on the feelings of everyone else to a really high degree. And because you do, if anyone was offended by a book, you can't read it. And it's not necessarily you being like, oh, I reject this author, or like automatically saying that author's like a bad person and not worthy of your time. It's more so of this author did something that hurt this person, and because I know that and it's attached to this media, I can't go near it, because it will literally be a bad reading experience for you. Like, you would be unable to enjoy that book knowing that. So I think if that's the case, then avoid it. But even with that, there are certain cases where even if I have a book and I have had a positive experience with the author, if they have done certain things that come to my knowledge that I don't agree with, that are at the extent to where I will not be able to read their books again, because there's such a negative vibe that's been placed on them because of the knowledge that I have. And I'll be constantly thinking about this crappy thing that they did while reading the book, and I just don't want to support them in any way, then I won't read it. So that has happened with a couple of authors. I have a very short list of authors where it's like, I am not going to touch this. Sometimes it can be for very minor reasons that are not at all to the same gravity of other authors and the crap that they have done, that I will still choose to read their works. Just because, if I haven't established some sort of relationship there, why am I going to go near that? So, for instance, an author like that would be James Patterson. He was running his mouth He was basically like, hey, like, men have it so hard right now and complaining. And it's like, oh, dude, you're like the #1 bestseller. Like, why are you complaining? why are you complaining about this? So it's like, okay, in the grand scheme of things, that is like no comparison to someone who has been like racist or homophobic or whatever the case may be. Like, there's literally no comparison between the two actions. But because I don't have any bond with him or his books whatsoever, I'm like, hey, you're on my no-buy list. You didn't have to do much to get there, but you're on my no-buy list. So, but there's also a difference between flawed ideology and a flawed person. There are people who do certain things that I think you have to be a very, very flawed person at your core in order to do those things. And so it makes it very hard to believe that you're redeemable. So the serial killers would fall into the flawed person part. I don't know how you could possibly be a good person and take someone else's life with no regard at all. Nothing. And to do it to multiple people. Like, there's no reason. How? Like, I feel like you're kind of like a bad person at the core if you're able to do that. Same thing with people that are accused of sexual assault, harassment, and stuff like that. I feel like there is something evil in you, that would allow you to be able to act on those thoughts. But I am more so, flawed person is not when you have the thoughts, because I feel like thoughts can change over time and you can learn. So I don't really dismiss people based off of thoughts that I don't agree with, because people can change in a day. Like, you never really know what's going on in their mind. And I do sometimes consider intent of something. So even if something has a negative effect, and I know that it wasn't the author's intention, then of course I'm not going to be like accepting their apologies and stuff like that for anybody else, because that's wrong. But on an individual level, I can be like, okay, we can continue. Even though you messed up, we can continue. But there's a difference between thinking and acting on thoughts. So if someone acts on the negative thing, then that is when they're going to be in the I am not dealing with you section. But if they're just having negative thoughts, or you're kind of reading it through their work or something like that, then I can kind of separate, but not when it goes into like the direct actions, like authors showing up on people's doorsteps because they gave them a 1-star review. They're going to go in the I'm not going to read you camp, whereas someone complaining about a 1-star review, if I haven't read them before, I'm probably not going to read their books simply because they complained about a reviewer and I don't agree with that. But if I've already read from them before, or have established some sort of positive relationship with them before, I'm going to be like, this is unprofessional for you to be complaining about a 1-star review, and I don't like it, but I don't even say anything to them because I'm just like, I'm not bringing the negativity in my life. Oh, I went on a long time for that, but hopefully that makes sense. So if you see me promote something on this channel and you're like, girl, don't you know some people don't like this author or don't like this book? I might know, but I don't feel like it's anybody's job to tell another person what sort of decisions they should make when it comes to reading, because then you are being, you're just making it worse, because then you're making everyone bad because you don't agree that they're not making the same decisions to completely write off others that you are. And I feel like, you know, there was this whole thing when I was growing up that had to do with like the word tolerance, and there's misunderstandings about what that word means. So to be tolerant means that you don't accept something, but you can keep your mouth closed, and not be in people's face about making them think the same way that you do. And I think that nowadays we have lost the ability that people used to have to be tolerant about things that they didn't like. And it's more so in the realm of acceptance, where like you have to accept my way of thinking. You have to do things the way I think, or you're a bad person. And to me, that actually comes with a level of immaturity. And I know it's going to get me in trouble on here. But yeah, I think people want everyone to think and feel the way that they feel. And when that doesn't happen, they get up in arms. And it doesn't matter what the situation is. They just get up in arms. And I think that we were better off as a society when, if you didn't like something, you're not trying to force people into thinking the same way that you do. You can have conversations to try to change how someone thinks and try to get them to understand why you feel the way that you do. But I think that it's important to, once you have those conversations, don't let those things completely change how you feel about a person just because they don't agree with you. I think it's short-sighted. So yeah, like there's people where I do not agree at all with things that they say. And I'm not afraid to speak my mind and be like, hey, I don't agree with you on this. I don't like this. But I'm not going to bring it up in every situation and try to get them to bend my way. And I'm kind of getting into family right here, because this is something that happens with me. I'll be like, I voted for this person and they all voted for this other person. So they think I'm in the wrong for voting for this person. And so they'll bring it up in every conversation. Well, I hope you're happy. Da 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 da. And it's interesting because then the other side of the family is, I'm in the same camp as them, and we're like, nah. But see, I'm not intolerant though. I don't accept what they're saying to me. I don't agree what they're saying with me. To me, their thought processing is flawed. Their information is flawed. They don't know what they're talking about. But I'm not trying to force them to see things my way, and it would be much better if they would just take a break and let me make my own decisions. And I think that that's respectful, and I think that that's mature to be able to hear someone out, maybe not agree with them, voice that you don't agree, but then shut up. And I don't think that happens anymore. I think people are so set on having to have everything their way. It's needy. It's entitled. It is not the way that the world operates. So I feel like you'll be much happier if you can get to the place where you can be tolerant of others and not necessarily accept the crap. There's a difference between being tolerant and being acceptant. And so I can tolerate people who have different views, but I don't have to accept theirs. I don't know. I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but anyway. Oh, my mama. Y'all, I just always do tangents. I never know if I'm coming across, because I'm not using direct examples, so you could, like, think completely different. I don't know. I try to be vague so that it can apply to anyone either way you want to with your own biases, and still get the point that I'm making. But the trouble with that is that sometimes you do take your own biases and apply it to what I'm saying that's very vague, and you're getting the complete opposite, perception of what I'm saying based off of your own biases of me or of yourself. I don't know. I hate making videos sometimes because I feel like I need to filter so that I don't invite negativity, but I don't like filtering because then I feel inauthentic, and it's a waste of my time, because like now I'm like 44 minutes into this video. For me to delete it because I feel like someone doesn't understand what I'm saying, or they don't agree with what I'm saying, is me catering to people that don't have the same level of respect for me that I would have for them. And I don't want to cater to those people. So, anyway. Oh, y'all are like, girl, you're getting into stuff that don't have nothing to do with this book tag. I know. Where was I at? I did what makes a good book. Not finishing a book. Author's personal life. That's what we were talking about? Oh, gosh. Okay. Number 17. If you could only read one genre for the rest of your time, what would it be? I'm going to go with sci-fi because it has the most subgenres. So sci-fi can be smacked in with every other genre. You can have historical sci-fi. You can have sci-fi fantasy. You can have sci-fi romance. It can be combined with any genre. So I'm going to go with sci-fi because then I'm not really giving up anything. Do you ever read a book without knowing anything about it? Yes. Yes, I do. Go check out my reading experiments videos. That's exactly what I did. I picked up books. I didn't look at the blurb, nothing. And I just started reading them and giving my feedback. And sometimes it's very comical how mad I get at a book a paragraph in. So, yeah, go watch that if you want to see me ranting. Number 19. What author, genre, series, or culture can you just not get into? Why? So I went with Amish romances because they aren't written by Amish people. They aren't written by Amish people, so it's not really showing you Amish life. So I'm like, it's Christian women. Just go write Christian fiction. It's fine. You don't need to write Amish. Because it's not accurate. It's not accurate. I haven't read one, but I'm not Amish. And guess what? There's not any information really out there because they keep everything in closed doors. So all the information that I know is based off of people who have been shunned and like kicked out of the community, and they've had film crews come to film the process of them leaving the community or staying in the same area but no longer being Amish. So it's very closed door. You can't really know what it's like unless you actually grew up in it. And so I'm like, you can't. There's no, I don't know. It's fine if you enjoy it. I don't gravitate toward that for that reason. Neil Gaiman. I don't like the sexualized characters a lot of the time and the stilted writing. Now, I will say that I did give him another chance, and I read the Graveyard Book graphic novels. There's 2 of them, and I actually really did enjoy it. So, I don't know if it was that someone else adapted the other 2 graphic novels, or that The Ocean at the End of the Lane was maybe one of his earlier works, and I just didn't like the writing to it. I don't know what the case was, but yeah, I definitely liked the Graveyard Book. So he's not completely off my list anymore, but he was when I wrote this down. So, The Guild, aka the Plated Prisoner series, or other books involving Stockholm Syndrome that is seen as sexy. I don't understand it. It's one of those things where I can't get the thought out of my mind that in the real world this is not okay. It should not be seen as romantic because Stockholm is like when someone literally has like immense power over you. And so because they have so much power, when they do the slightest nice thing, you start to see them as like a protector, but you're their victim. So I can't like it because it's a mental disorder. It's like, it's literally a mental thing that your brain does in order to cope so that you can survive. But the whole time, even though your brain changes to tell you this person is not bad, I'm in love with this person, it's a coping mechanism that your brain is doing. It's not reality. And reality is that they're a perpetrator and you are a victim. It's not your fault in any way. And it should never be looked at that it's not your fault. It's the same way with people that are groomed. They believe that they're in this relationship with this person who truly loves them. And there's nothing wrong with them. They're not at fault. They are the victim. The other person is the perpetrator. It's the same thing with this. And because I know that, I can't go into books that have that there and root for those relationships, even though it's fiction. Because there's real world people that have Stockholm Syndrome. And it's not healthy. And it is something that they need to go through lots of therapy. to come out of and like have regular, healthy relationships that are not rooted in bad power dynamics. So yeah, that's why I can't get into that. I'm trying to get to where I can separate fiction from reality consequences, so I could even read something like that has incest in it. I don't I don't really want to do that. But I'm just saying it would be nice to be the kind of reader that doesn't have any sort of like responsibility. I don't want to have to read responsibly. I think it's funner when you don't read responsibly because you can enjoy anything. And when you read responsibly, you sometimes put in things that aren't actually there. I'm guilty of this. So I might read fatphobia into a line of a book, or I might read acephobia into a line of a book, and the author's not being that in any way, but it's because of my own biases that I see that being there, even if it's not. So I would like to be the reader that goes into a book with no biases at all, and I can just enjoy something. But that's not really possible, at least not at this time, so it is what it is. Insecure characters. I don't like characters that are insecure about themselves. Again, that's something that's probably kind of controversial to say, because people are like, well, why wouldn't you like them? People have the right to be insecure. It's a human experience that people have, and people experience it in different ways. But if the story is not going to result in that person becoming a secure person, then I don't want to read it, because it's not, it comes off as annoying. I'm just being honest. It comes off as annoying. There are certain things that I just can't relate to when it comes to insecurities. I can relate to insecurities when it comes to figuring out if someone likes you, because there are those things where you can have complete and total self-confidence and you think that you are this person that's worthy of love, but you can still have doubts that someone else can see those good qualities in you. And I think that that's natural, and that's something that I experience every day, where I know how I am, and I know how, like, I can see other people and how I can have compassion towards other people, and I can understand other people. And I don't really villainize a lot of people either, but I have this thing where my brain tells me I just trust that other people have the capacity to do the same thing, because I haven't seen enough evidence of it. So I see more evidence of people not being able to think that way than I do of people being able to think that way. And so I just doubt people's ability to do that, if that makes sense. So like when it comes with relationships, it was always the same thing. Now, once the characters are in a relationship, then those insecurities should go away. I don't want to see them continuing throughout the book, because it's like you're not having any self-growth, and I want to see growth. I don't want to see you not believing in yourself or seeing yourself as being unworthy for any reason. A lot of times the most prevalent one that I see that has to do with insecurities is either one, the relationship one, or two, has to do with looks. And I am the kind of person where I do not and have not ever attached my self-worth to the way I look. But I think that a lot of people do. And it's sad to see, because I don't want them to live in a world where they are constantly feeling like they have to measure up to some sort of beauty standard in order for people to like them or to love them. I think that it's extremely sad. And I wish that that wasn't the case, and I feel for them. But at the same time, I don't want to read about it, because I can't fix that in the real world. And if it's not going to be fixed in the book, I don't want to put myself through that, because I just feel bad for the people. And it does come off as annoying, because you're like, I like these things about you that you're saying are flaws. They're not flaws. So it's like you just want to shake the character. And I don't want to read a book to be frustrated because of the character's low self-esteem. So I like reading books where the characters are confident, because that's the place where I'm at in my life. There's only certain... My insecurities all have to do with other people and their view of me. They do not have to do with my view of myself. I have very strong confidence in myself and my own abilities. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. And I'm okay with both of those things. I'm okay with not being great at certain stuff. I'm okay with having flaws. And I know what those flaws are. I'm very irritable. I'm very mean and snappy sometimes. I am selfish. I am manipulative. I know these things. And that's okay. It just makes them who I am. But yeah, I don't like insecurity. I don't like that. I don't like fat phobia. I don't like when characters get diet drinks, because to me it's saying, again, your image, your body is a determiner of your self-worth. So when I see diet drinks, it's like me putting that ideal on the author and assuming that the author has that thought and is perpetuating that your body equals your worth. And I don't like it. So I get annoyed by something as small as a character drinking a diet drink. And I've told this to my friend and she laughs at me and she's like, girl, I don't get it. I like diet drinks. I like diet drinks. They taste better than the regular thing. And I'm like, okay, that might be the case for you, but why did you taste the diet drink to begin with? Now, at the same time, I do drink stuff that has 0 calories or like 10 calories, because usually it just means it has no sugar. And that means that it's actually a healthier choice. That's what it all comes down to with the diet drinks, is that you're not actually making a healthier choice. It just simply has less calories. So if the only difference is that one has less calories, then like your reason for doing it, if you're doing it because of something other than taste, is like a vanity reason. Whereas if you're choosing something that has 0 calories, it's not necessarily a vanity thing. It's like, literally, this drink is healthier for me. I would rather put that in my body than put in this like 300 calorie sugar-filled Coca-Cola. So I don't know. That's my spiel on Diet Cokes. Agree to disagree. You probably disagree, but I'm just telling you my brain processes when I see the word diet in front of anything. And then, do you think... Oh no. That was... we're still on the same question. Dumb characters who ruin everything. So these are people who have the intellect to make good decisions, but choose not to. That's what I mean by dumb. And selfish characters. I don't like selfish characters. But also I don't like pushovers. I don't like characters who think that they have to be the martyr. I'm like, no. You should put yourself first, but also not be selfish. Does that make any sense to y'all? Put yourself first, but when there's opportunities to do good things for other people, then do those things. So it shouldn't be, there should be some instances where maybe you do something that's someone else's choice, but it's still not like a major sacrifice for yourself, if that makes sense. I'll give you a simple example of putting yourself first, but still being somewhat selfish. The kind of person that I like. So I went out with my mom the other day, get a bunch of free food everywhere. So I thought I was getting a free dessert at this one place. It wound up being a free meal. I didn't know. We had our mind set on dessert. So I was like, okay, I really wanted to try this banana pudding. But when I had read off the desserts, my mom didn't really have any cool response or whatever to the banana pudding, so I knew she wasn't interested. But I had also mentioned before looking at the menu, I really hope that there's a chocolate cake with like hot fudge on it or something like that with some ice cream. And so, of course, on the menu, there was a triple layer chocolate cake with ice cream. So then we get there. I wasn't going to get it free. She offered to pay for it, but she's like, get whatever dessert you wanted. We already had your mind set on it. And I was like, you're good with the banana pudding? And she's like, yeah, whatever you want. And I said, okay, but there is this chocolate cake on here. I know you really like chocolate cake. That's her favorite. And so instead of getting the banana pudding, which would have been my number 1 choice, I went with my number 2 choice, which I was equally satisfied with. Maybe not equal, but I was still really, really satisfied with. And it was actually the initial thing that I was thinking of trying to get. So it's like I wasn't making any sacrifice by picking the chocolate cake, but I knew that it made her happier than if I had chosen the banana pudding. So that's what I mean. I wouldn't have been like, get the apple cobbler and then me not be able to eat any of it, because then that's like being the martyr, and I'm not the martyr, but I'm willing to make compromises to make everyone feel a little better. And she was very, very happy with the chocolate cake, by the way, and so was I. It was delicious. Anyway, I like characters that I can relate to, that make decisions the way that I make decisions. That's all I'm getting at. That's all I'm getting at here. Let's just be real. Okay, next part. An hour-long video. Are you kidding me? Okay, whatever. Oh, undeniable racist. What do I mean by undeniable? I mean, like, they will literally say the stuff. It's direct. It's not a microaggression. It's not something where they're just ignorant and they don't understand that they're saying something racist. No, I mean, like, flat out racist. These are the types of people in YouTube comments that literally go and search for videos made by interracial couples to tell them that they are disgraced and that they are an abomination to the white race and all this other kind of crap. Undeniable racist. I hate those. Yeah, those. I don't want those. What was the question even? Author, series, cultures just annoy you. Yeah, that. Ain't going near you with a 10-foot pole. Bullies. So these are people that like calling people ugly on the internet. Or going, you know, talking bad about their 1-star reviewers, or demeaning whole classes of people, or like talking, like downplaying books that teen girls like all of those little things. I don't like it when people do that crap. Killers with no remorse. There can be people who have murdered people that do regret their decisions. And I don't think that they're necessarily bad people just because they did that. I do think that there's people that have the capacity of change, and I am open to that. But when it comes to like serial killers, you didn't regret what you did. You continued to do it. You didn't have remorse. So don't try to convince me otherwise. I don't like fat phobia. I don't like preachy prose. And when I say preachy prose, I mean from any direction. This can be with liberal ideology. This can be with right-wing ideology. I don't care what you're being preachy about. I don't want you to be preachy. You can put your message in the book without it coming across as preachy at all. You can do that. You can present things in a way where you're giving a message to the reader, but it's subliminal. And it's subliminal in a way where their mind is, those wheels are turning and burning, and they're coming to the conclusion that you wanted them to reach, but you never forced them or shouted at them to try to get them to see things your way. So I don't like books that are, they're like, it's like an author insert where they're like telling you, this, and you can see it when you see characters who are the extreme of something, and the only reason why they're put into the book is to be villainized. I don't like that. I feel like people need to be approached with a sense of nuance, and that people can have faulty ideals without being faulty people. And when an author is able to present a book that way, where they see how maybe someone who's not being overtly evil still has negative impact, and that allows a reader to maybe see themselves in the person that is the villain in order to make effective change. And you don't get that when you put them as the baddest of the bad. The reader's not going to see themselves in the villain, so therefore they're not going to change. So what is the point of having that person in the book? There's not. So I don't like preachy prose. And I also don't want to read anything by accused predators. If they're dead and there was never any convictions. There was never any, like, you know, witness statements or anything like that. That stuff was going on, and it was just stuff that was rumored. Then I can make a concession to that. I can maybe separate the art from the artist. A lot of people have to do this with some famous folks, where they were definitely rumored to have done stuff, and I'm not saying that they didn't. It could be that they did, but there was never, because I'm not there, I don't know what actually happened, then I can be like, okay, I think this may have happened, but I don't know for sure, and because I don't know for sure, then I get to make the decision on what I want to do about it. Do you think everyone should read? Why? No. Because there are other forms of media that can have the same benefits and are more enjoyable and accessible for people, whether or not disabilities limit them to those options. I'm just going to leave it at that. There's lots of different forms of storytelling. Not everyone wants to read a book physically. They'd rather go watch a movie. That's fine. It doesn't make them dumb. Doesn't make them less than. And sometimes, you know, if people are having to use other avenues of taking in books, because of disabilities that they have that make it impossible for them to, like, sit down and physically read, maybe those other avenues aren't sufficient for them, so they choose not to do it. So, like, why judge that? It's fine. People don't have to read in order to have a fulfilling life. And then I tagged Gaia Athena, Tangible Reads, BookTube with Amy, Courtney Reads, Becca Books and Bujo, and Vidania Silverscribe. And I've maxed out the recording time on my phone. I had to delete videos to finish this one. So yeah, that's going to be all the videos that I'm recording today, at least until I transfer files. And honestly, my voice is shot. And I've missed, like, all of the reading sprints that I was supposed to be doing while making these videos. But I do have several book tags left to do, so you might see me again in this outfit. I really don't know. But for today, that is all. Thanks for watching this extremely long video that I'm not going to edit, other than to smash the clips together because it was 3 different video files. But anyway, that's all.